An opportunity to host this exhibition and its associated events fitted in with our mission statement, which is to provide an inclusive museum service locally, nationally and internationally, telling stories of place, people and objects through our arts and crafts house and our collections in order to create inspirational cultural experiences that enrich and transform lives. As a museum, we have developed our inclusive practice to ensure that we represent all of society through our collections and our buildings. This exhibition allows us to showcase Black communities, locally, nationally and internationally, who have previously been hidden from our practices. Our Arts and Crafts House provides the perfect backdrop to showcase a diverse range of artisans whose work covers disciplines that demonstrate complex skills, working in mediums such as glass, clay, metal and wood, and lots more. I'm sure you can see the links to craftwork employed in making this house and the exhibition that's up on the walls. Hopefully, you will have by now seen the exhibition and Jardès Ford's exquisite glasswork in conversation with our collection of Tiffany glass upstairs. And we have to remember that the Haworth has Black lives intertwined with it through the textile industry and the slaves that produced the cotton that was sold and made here, but also through Joseph Briggs over here, because many of you won't know that he married a Black woman at a time when it was, in most states in America, illegal to marry a Black woman. So these lives are already present in the building, but they're often hidden. So now I'm going to pass you over to Lucille Junkere.
I'll just give a brief introduction to myself. Let me read my blurb on my website. Okay, so my name is Lucille Junkere. I'm a research-based visual artist. For my research-based work, I explore the legacies of British colonialism on African, Caribbean textile histories. The dispossession caused by the transatlantic slave trade means that ancestral and cultural connections have been severed. So my work explores identity and a past connected to chattel slavery. I use the materiality of cloth, visual symbolism, botanical and ochre pigments to consider this loss, grief, healing, resistance and reconnection. I'm joined by these wonderful artists and artisans. I'll go through the agenda after I just briefly say their names here. We have Joe Seeley, Donald Burr, Jason Stocks-Young, and Vanley Burke. So tonight, we're going to, before we start the proceedings, we're going to do a quick libation. I'll explain what that is. Then there's going to be an extended introduction by these wonderful artists and artisans. Each one in turn is going to introduce you to their work, and there's going to be visuals that will accompany their work. We're going to have a panel discussion, and I'm going to kind of treat it very informal, as if we're all in here. It's a very intimate space. We're all in here. We're gathering for a dinner party. So I'll just keep an eye on the time for structure, but I just think it's really nice if you feel so moved on the panel to comment or ask someone a question, please feel free. 7:30, we're going to have Q&A session, and there's a roaming mic, which Gillian's going to be around with. So that will be at 7:30. So any questions that you have, just make a note or keep it in your mind. And then 7:45, we're just going to have thanks and closing remarks. So when I'm in, a lot of my work is focused on Jamaica, which is part of my African Caribbean identity. So I have a large project where I'm going to different spaces in Jamaica, and I'm doing research on Jamaican plants that can provide a dye, the soluble part of the plant, or a pigment, the insoluble part. Most of the spaces that I go to in Jamaica are former plantations, former enslaved plantations where people were enslaved. So I ask myself this question all the time. How do we honour our enslaved ancestors when there are no graves with wilting flowers to freshen, no sites to shed remembrance tears? Their brief harrowing lives ended in fields of indigo, cotton, logwood and sugar. Their names listed in colonial ledgers as stock inventory are dehumanising chattel words. Who are they and how do we mourn them? How do we honour them? So as part of my field kit that includes a natural insecticide, I don't want to harm the pollinators, so I make it up. I also include rum, and that's because when I go to these spaces, I do a libation, and other people on the panel are familiar with that. Vanley, I know, does a libation. So libations are closely related to liberation in Caribbean cultures, and this is because of their African, pre-colonial, pre-slavery origins. Libation rituals and ceremonies challenge colonial ideologies. They provide an opportunity for African people to reconnect to this pre-colonial past. Because a libation draws on spiritual traditions in which alcohol drinking or pouring appeases spirits or invokes our ancestors, who become our guides and advisors. So, because we can't do the rum pouring here, I'd like to share with you a vocal libation. It's by a vocalist called Enam. Enam belongs to Ewe ethnic group, which is mostly located in Ghana, southwestern Benin, Togo and Nigeria. Ewe descendants are also located in the Caribbean. They're all over the Caribbean islands because they are the descendants of Ewe people who were enslaved. So before we play this music, it's just going to be about 2 minutes 40. If you feel so moved, please close your eyes, reflect on what I've shared, or reflect on your own ancestor who have passed. So the vocalist, she's singing in Ewe, and basically she's singing about pouring a libation to say thank you to her. She's actually focused specifically on her foremothers, and she's appreciative of the blessings that they've given her. So I'll ask John to play the vocal libation. Thank you.
Magachirani bana mamanyo Ajaba mahanya yaiwa Magarani bana togbinyo Ajaba mahanya yaiwa Magarani bana togbinyo Ajaba mahanya yaiwa Magachirani bana mamayo Blessing nuni Fire never quench ever blessing Nusike makwana ye majina Nusike majina ye makwana Ragbana vanem yakboga Vanunya nemaga hoha.
So the ancestors have been acknowledged, and hopefully they've been appeased. So I'm going to start off the introductions with Joe Seeley, the photographer for the exhibition. Joe.
Hi, evening everybody. Thanks for coming. My name's Joanne Seeley, and I'm a photographer really by incident rather than anything else. I come from a fully creative background. I used to be a copywriter, and I worked in television and radio. And then I started my own marketing agency, which is my day job. But I have a business where I would be photographing hair hair and beauty. Me and my husband have had that business since we were in our early 20s, and it's still going. And that's how I started, because I used to art direct the photography for it. And then, any of you who've worked with a photographer, you'll know sometimes it's quicker and easier to do it yourself if you've got that vision. So that's how I started. But I'd been doing food photography as well. But over time, what happened was that I started to work on projects, and Vanley and I were talking about this. There was things that I wanted to show and things that I wanted to have examples of, and that's why we have Black Artisans. Am I talking through these?
Yeah.
So here is just a selection of the images, and the reason why the project came about is because as well as running the agency, I work as a business advisor in the creative industries. So I work with a lot of creative businesses, day in, day out, so I have access to these individuals. And one of the things I was thinking eventually at one point was, why am I not seeing these guys in the mainstream? Even though I know very well that in their own little silos, they're there, they're acknowledged, people know who they are, but outside of that. So I thought, well, that sounds like a good ongoing project. So I started the project with people that I knew. I asked them to be involved. I got some funding to do it. And the aim was to photograph people around the country and show and open up the doors a little bit to some wonderful, wonderful makers. I mean, all creatives are the same. They're all very insecure. They're all, as soon as they knew I'm coming to the studio, it's all tidy. It's very But they're also a particular type of person, and it's just such a joy to work with creative people, which is why I do. So to be photographing them is even better. They were all asked questions, the same set of questions, about how they started, why they started, what was their influence, where are they going. There was a whole set of standard questions, and they're all recorded. A couple of the films are upstairs, the rest just haven't been made yet. But that's really wonderful also to hear their stories of how they started. Some are very traditional in that their parents, for example, were sculptors or things like that. But Chris here, he went to the Glasgow School of Art. He's a really well-established sculptor in his own right. I mean, phenomenally so. He runs a school he's in West London. His two daughters are sculptors as well. His daughter Freya was on pottery throwdown. So, but, he's really well-established. And he's just so lovely, so unassuming. When I went to the studio, very welcoming. And, multiply that by the 35 other people that I photographed. The other thing that I was interested to show, actually, was that when I photographed these guys, they eventually, when our first exhibition was at the William Morris Gallery in London, and none of them met one another. They didn't actually know about one another in many cases. They just didn't know. And so this lady, Carla, who had just moved into this space, she's in Bedford. I think the day or the 2 days before, I'd photographed people in Hastings, and so they're all over the country, but not as far north as they could have been, and not as far south as they could be, But we're moving around the country, and we had a deadline on the William Morris Gallery, so that's why only 26 were done initially, and my last one was Doreen, and I said to her, I'd really like to photograph somebody who works in wood, and she said, I know somebody, and I said, oh my God, he's going to be in Scotland or something. And it turned out he was in Leighton, which is just up the road to where I've been lived. Can you believe that? So Donald was the last person that I photographed. The other thing was it was important for me to photograph people that work culturally as well. So we've got the steel pan makers, we've got people that make, African pieces, and so on and so forth. So that was really important to me. These guys came from, I think, one's in Birmingham, the guy on the left, and then the other one came from Bristol. Yeah, I think he's in Bristol. And they came to London to shoot for me, which was just amazing. So I was well chuffed about that. Those are bass drums, by the way. This is Doreen, who's over in the Oxo Tower. Doreen's been in the Oxo Tower for 25 years. Who knew? 25 years. Literally opposite her, you look out and that's the Thames, isn't it? So she's well established. She's got work in the V&A. Her pieces, even when I was there talking to her, tape model as well. I mean, this is what I mean. This is just opening up the doors to people to make sure they're part of the general, community of creative, but also to ensure that other people, young people, hobbyists, understand this is part of the makeup of the creative industries. It's not just what perhaps you might traditionally see in some spaces. We've got well-established people. And actually, when I started the project, I wanted to work with older, more established people because I wanted to show that these guys have been doing this for a long time. Mm-hmm. But then I ended up coming up with so many amazing younger people, Dahlia's one of them here, and many other younger people that I thought, no, let's just forget about that restriction, let's just shoot them, as they come up. So the project has been developing. The idea was always that it would be moving. I must talk about this guy, Satch. He is a French horn repairer. He's a brass instrument repairer. He came here when he was 6. He went into an apprenticeship at 14 for the same company and trained right through, left there as a director, and then set up his own business, because these guys don't die. They just, everybody knows. I got hold of him through a musician friend. Everybody who is a brass instrument player in bands, orchestras, they will know who he is. Mm-hmm. This is what this is like. And, he's still doing it. And how amazing is that? Mm-hmm. And all of these guys want to pass on their skills and want to share what they do and how they go about it. So that, like a lot of these guys here, they're involved in the colleges and things like that. Mm-hmm. Then you've got the younger ones, like Francesca here, who's a metal worker. I mean, she's in Sheffield, exquisite work, and she's lovely as well. So, we're sharing the love. We've got mosaics, we've got a perfumier in this set. We've got another, Garfield, he makes steel pans as well, he tunes them as well. We've got such a selection of people, and the people that are not yet shot include a bed maker, a watchmaker, which is like hen's teeth, a watchmaker, let alone a black watchmaker, and who else? There's some people we just haven't shot yet. It's about 15 people we just haven't photographed. So I feel very lucky to have done this so far, and the intention is to make a book and get some more money and do more and more and more, but right now we've got a good body of work to be going on with.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Donald, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Donald Baugh. I studied for 5 years, 3 years at a college in Oxford, Rycote College, of which I've been back to give a talk, and I'll be doing a workshop with some of the students. And that place was my best years in education. I absolutely loved it, except for the first semester. Living in west of London, I was going back. But then after Christmas, I said, I'm either going to stop or apply myself, and fell in love with it. We used to have lock-ins, I absolutely loved it, And then I went to Middlesex. Didn't like it so much, but Middlesex introduced me to other disciplines. And then from then, worked mainly as a cabinet maker, doing high-end kitchens, wardrobes, freestanding furniture. Then a few years, I did a show in New York and wanted to go to Tokyo. So when I got back, she said, there's a possibility of going to Tokyo. And I've always said somebody else has to pay. She said, whatever it is, you have to take on the plane with you. So I ended up with these lights. And when you do lights, you design around the fittings. So I got to Tokyo, found the fittings, set up, and they all said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going on holiday. So I literally turned up 10, and I was just wandering around, and I was making, it was quite successful. So after that, I thought, okay, I'm going to start doing more lighting and sculptures, and in the end, it took me to where I am now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I absolutely love what I do. Yeah. So here you have, this is the fourth or fifth light I did. So this now lives in Norway, in Bergen. So what it is as well, in my 20s, I used the word bum around Europe. I used to run, so I used to just go off and just sort of wander around. But I got to know so many different people. So now I've got a metal suitcase, and I've now become an international smuggler. So wherever I go, I leave things with people. So I said, yeah, I'm going to call on you one day when I'm doing a show in Europe, because I'm not really a Brexiteer, So I've sort of left stuff at different places. And the idea is that I will gather them at some point. Yeah. And again, it's this thing about passing on to the next generation. it's quite sad what I see, because we were just speaking a moment ago. When I was at school, I had woodwork, metalwork, technical drawing and art every week for 5 years. And now I hear when students come in, they have semesters, and it's so sad. I mean, fortunately for my own daughter, she's had international schooling through her mum, and so she's quite versed in all different kinds of crafts. But when I look outside of that, it's quite sad what I'm seeing. Even now this week, there's 350,000 short of apprentices, and over 1 million tradesmen. It's really quite sad what's happening. So, right, going back to where I am now. So this is part of a new collection of work called Masai. I'm looking also towards more Africa for ways forward. This is Kakra, which is a lot of my friends are from Ghana. Grew up with friends from Ghana and Nigeria, so I'm now asking them for names of things. Like I've got a solo show, Akanza, which means reflection in Ga. So I'm now using a lot of that back into what I'm doing. I play around a lot with what I work when I work. But I'm now becoming more purposeful in terms of I'm asking questions with some of my work, and I'll come back to that later on. One of my favourite pieces is a piece called Uhuru, and the reasons for that is I'm a trekker, you know. So I'm developing a range called To Boldly Go, and I will have everyone into this, you know. And fortunately, the gallery that I'm doing a solo show, one of the ladies, she's a trekker as well, so we're on about, Star Trek. And Angel's going, stop it, you two, stop it, you know. So I do dream a lot, you know. I am a dreamer, but I believe in chasing that dream and working for that dream. I don't have a TV. I haven't had a TV since my daughter was about 7, and so we've said no, we've got to draw and do other things. So when I'm at home, I doodle and put my ideas down. And my ideas, I've got sketchbooks. It's my diary of my thoughts, and I go back and forth, you know. And I believe in taking off what's on the canvas. So again, one of my aims is to mimic nature with texture, which is, I've just started doing that. And I'm also, in the new year, I'm just going to indulge where if I sell one piece a month, it'd be fine. Where I'm just going to play and then carry on the adventure of just making what I want to make. And if somebody wants me to do something else, this is Uhuru. Mm-hmm. So this is Uhuru number 1. There's now 4. One lives in America, the other's here. I mean, I love Uhuru. I really do. And there's 2 reasons why I love Uhuru. I rent space in a workshop where you've got CNC machines. There's about 4 or 5, including a 5-axle, which I've used. But with the verge of AI, I've gone back to just making by hand. We've got a room with 3D printers, 2 about this size. So I've gone back and said, no, I'm not doing that no more. Because you program it, you come in the next day, and you sort of say, oh, okay, I'll take that. But when you're making the models by hand, you're being informed by the wood. Mm-hmm. So I've just started making again, you know, and I had, a month to make 6 pieces, all by hand. It was a labour of love. The first 3, I said, right, I'm going to use a chisel. I'm going to be proper, no dust. I was like, tinder dust. I'm tired, I'm right-handed. I was my left hand, so I'm not doing that again. It was really the chain gang. So the alternative is using power tools. It's dusty, but if you have the right equipment on, it's fine. But I actually love making. You know, that's what, you know, that's all I want to do. You know, I've now got 2 people managing me. So I just said, you don't care if you sell it through the gallery. In America is where, a few years ago, I blew up. So I started selling a lot. So they call it the dude from London or whatever. But it's really where I think my primary market will be. There's a book coming out this October called Kinship, Crafted Kingship, which I will pass on the information, which is about Caribbean designers and makers from mainly in the States and myself. Yeah, and the other thing what's happening is also joining Michelangelo Foundation or Homophoba this year. And it's quite funny when Joe said about the workshops being tidy. My workshop is never tidy. And when they kept on saying, oh, could we have something more atmospheric about your workshop? And I know what they want, but I'm not that person with chisels all lined up. So I kept on showing them like dirt aprons with glue on. And in the end, they just said, okay, that's fine, you know. But when Joe said about it was not like that when she came, there's dust everywhere and people everywhere, you know. And people have pulled me up and said, you posted something, but your workshop's really messy. I said, so? You know, it is who I am in a workshop. You know, this is a chair. This was a commission for a chair. The couple, when my mum died, they were really, really, really good. And they bought a bench off me, which was not quite like this. And Linda, who was a bit nuts, she said, oh, get an upholster so we could put something on it. I said, Linda, no, I'm not making a chair, so you upholster it. So I changed it. They were away. And I said, oh, and I've changed it, and it cost you another £300. Mind you, they had a resort in the Cayman Turks. They said, yeah, okay, you know. But, I mean, they're a great couple, you know. So this is one of the chairs I've done. I'm not going to do many more, I don't think. But I don't know. You know, I'm changing day by day. But at the moment, I'm just into sculptures and getting bigger and bigger, climbing.
Donald, I'm going to invite Jason to introduce himself. But once we get to the discussion, I'd like to circle back and ask you about the title of that chair. Yeah, is that okay?
That's what I said. Yes,
thank you. Jason.
So my name's Jason Stocksyoung, so hello. Oh wow, what a journey. I'm leatherworker by trade. I've actually got two companies. So I've got Diamond All Leather Workshop, where I do a lot of teaching. I've got JSY Leatherworks, where I do kind of commissions and repairs and ball repairs. My journey into leatherworks kind of slightly different, I suppose, a different perspective, because this is my second career. My first career is 23 years digital marketing. So pretty much at the best agencies in the world, so Saatchi, Ogilvy, Mather, working on a variety of brands, which is insane when I think back, like Guinness, Adidas, Nike, Puma, British Airways, Unilever, I could go on, but all in a digital space. So I'm managing creative departments and production departments doing this. And it's interesting because although it's a creative kind of industry, but it's non-tangible. It's on a computer screen, it's on a mobile phone. And I've done it so much, I just kept on doing it. And I think I got to a point where I was a bit broken, being in London doing this. I was a little bit broken with it all, but I couldn't understand why. So me and the wife decided to leave London and move back up to Holmfirth. We live in Holmfirth, last of the summer wines where we live. And I'm from Leeds, and you can tell by accent. I brought my passport. And I was a bit of a lost puppy when I got back up here because I didn't know what to do with myself. So I did a 9-week furniture restoration course in the Holmfirth kind of civic hall, local community place. And it's interesting because it was the second week I'd gone in and I'd started working on this little stool, nothing special. I'd taken the calico off and I sanded it down and everything. And it's the second week when I bought some lovely Designers Guild material, being in London, and I couldn't wait to get back. And it was a real overwhelming sensation of achievement and that sense of I've created something, or I've started to create something. And that was the bit that was missing from my life before, doing 23 years of digital, and I couldn't understand it. But at that point, I really understood it, that I needed to be in an industry where I'm doing something with these. And it was a serendipitous meeting, serendipitous point in my life where I met an ex-saddler, grumpy old sod, he was, in Matlock in Derbyshire. But he took to me like duck to water. He seemed to kind of like me. And there was a big event going on there, and there's leather being sold and saddlery and everything. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. And started talking to him, and me and him just clicked. And I could see that he was very well liked in the saddle industry and very well revered and everything. And I just plucked up the courage to ask him if I could learn what he knows and all the traditional skills in leatherwork, and he said yes. So I learnt all these skills, but not with the mindset of setting up a little shop or selling loads of commissions and everything. I kind of like the side of teaching other people. I'm the kind of person, and my wife will vouch for this, is that I'm the kind of person with £1,000 in my pocket, I give £800 away and keep 200 quid for myself and Louise. So it's and it's not the best business brain in the world, but that's just how I'm built. And for me to teach traditional skills to people who won't come through my door studio, it's an absolute privilege and an honour, and I never take that for granted. You just pretend that we're in a different world we were 5 years ago, and I kind of find that I love teaching people to learn bags, who wants to learn traditional skills, because we're losing it, however you want to look at it, and being able to do that on a day-to-day basis is a real privilege. And also, it kind of lines on to what you were saying, is it keeps me present. And I don't know if you ever noticed that for makers in the room, is that I've just come from a world where I'm literally multitasking in my sleep, where I'm not doing 8% of the job, but times 12, I'm not really doing it very well. And I've stripped that away to do something where I just focus my time in the present moment. And that's so important for me more than ever. And some of the work he's showing here, I'd actually managed to do a bag for Harrison Ford, which is quite funny you said about Star Trek. So I'm a big Star Wars person. Yeah. I was trying to do the Klingon sign. Yeah. You know what I mean? That was an opportunity I was not gonna let go by. And he's like, yeah, where do I sign? Just ask me once. All I remember was that when he received the bag that I'd done, this one in a previous image I'd done, he were filming Indiana Jones, the third one or the fourth, I think it's the fourth one, in the Scottish Borders. And he's in a big trailer, because all these actors apparently have these really big trailers, which they don't really need. And apparently it was on this chair, and it's a lovely calico bag that my wife had actually made, and apparently he saw this and he walked up to it and he kind of pulled up the handle and he took the calico off, and he just stood there in complete awe. He couldn't believe it. He was that, and his assistant told me this on the phone, so I got to hear this, and he sent me a post and he signed it, saying, lovely bag, thank you.
You know why though?
Why?
He's a craftsman, he's a carpenter.
Oh, he's a carpenter.
Yeah.
Well,
Appreciate
the thing is,
it.
no, for real. The thing is, I'd actually put a letter in the bag to say, dear, I hope you like the bag. The thing is, Mr. Ford, we've actually met before. I actually served him a suit at Paul Smith, because I did a job as Saturday boy for 8 years at Paul Smith. And he came downstairs, and as usual, I'm trying to keep out of trouble, so they always put me in the suit room, because there's no windows or anything. And I'm buried in tapes, and I'm trying to look at all these tapes, and I look up, and he's like, oh my God, it's Harrison Ford. And I couldn't speak, and I pretty much sound a bit hoarse right now, so I'm not being well. Pretty much how I sounded when I tried to speak to him. I sounded like Percy Pig. And he's just stood there, and he kept going, are you all right, son? And I'm going, yes. And it was so funny, and he remembered. But yeah, that was a real highlight for me, because like I said, I'm a big Star Wars fan, and also that creative element of leatherwork is that I get inspiration from a lot of things. I live near Saddleworth Moor. If you ever know about Saddleworth Moor, oh my God, it's just like the most beautifulest place. And that's my drive every day. Luckily, I drive from home to Saddleworth, so I'm stopping every 10 minutes going, this just cannot be real. It's like Lord of the Rings times 4. So I can't help but get inspiration from that. whether it be the colours, or I'm going through autumn season now, so you get a wealth of lovely burgundies and then rust, and you just look and think, this is just fantastic. So I get a lot of my colours quite earthy. You'll see in some of the pictures that is very much me in a nutshell. And it works, it just works, and I just hope it never stops.
Thank you.
It's all right.
Yeah, lovely, thank you. Vanley, your turn.
Okay, so I am Vanley Burke. I am primarily known as a photographer, although I'm not quite sure the difference between artist and photographer. I came to England in 1965 from Jamaica, rural Jamaica. I was given a camera while I was still living in Jamaica, and that's how my interest in photography came about. I have to say that I was first introduced to the subject of blackness through a story I heard as a youngster in the kindergarten. It was about the Morant Bay Rebellion in 1865. I lived pretty well in the footsteps of those people who were massacred, really, by the British Governor-General of the time. I think he was a Governor-General at the time. And I live in there. Now, my parents had come, my mother had come to England to, as many people in the Windrush generation, first to improve their lot and also to help to rebuild this country. And so I was very young. In fact, I don't remember my mother. The first time I saw my mother, I was 15 years old. And so in one of the many parcels that we received as children, I received a camera, and I was quite fascinated by it. I describe where I live as, you know, when you can't get there, you know, when the donkey can't go anymore, I live around the corner. It's pretty rural, so imagine a rural person living in that, you know, that sort of space, receiving a camera. It was just fascinating. Most of my friends were having American cop cars or, you know, pop guns and things like that. So anyway, my interest grew, and I came to England in 1965. And I think I was longing, having heard the Morant Bay Rebellion story, and which is about the past, and, you know, my parents hear about the future. When I came, I really just got stuck into documenting, developing my photography, and later on documenting the communities. I was particularly interested in doing that because at the time we were, the way we were represented in the press was quite negative, and the life I was living and the people around me weren't, you know, living the experience that I'd seen in the newspapers and press. And so I started documenting. I say, as a people, we are custodian of our own history. We must participate in writing our own history, and my limited ability as a photographer, I'll use that. And I was in sight, if you like, of the Windrush generation, in that I couldn't photograph their arrival, but I could photograph aspects of their presence. And that which I couldn't photograph, I would collect. So I also have an archive of pretty major archive at Birmingham libraries, including my flat. So anyway, I decided I'll photograph everyday life from between birth and death. And to do that, I created, if you like, a framework that I would fill. So I looked at, we didn't have mentors in those days. We didn't have anyone to talk to, really. So I'm talking about 1970s. And so what I did is the framework was like religion, politics, and, you know, other subjects, and informal religion, education, informal and formal education, and so on. And so I just started taking photographs. And again, galleries weren't particularly interested in showing the work. And we didn't have mobile phones that you could take around and show people the work that you were doing. So I had to take a box of photographs around to show the people I was photographing, because they're very mistrustful of photographers. You know, why are you taking it? Are you working for the police? Are you working for social service, and so on? So anyway, having done a lot of that, you know, I've been doing that pretty long for some considerable time. And I'm waiting for the negatives to get to the next set. So as you can see here, I mean, you might have looked through some of the photographs. This is, for example, the washing of the feet, which is taken literally from, you know, the Bible. You have communion, then you have the washing of the feet. You have baptism, and so these most of the people in that photograph are no longer with us. This was taken, I would say, in the 70s. in the 70s this would have been taken. And so I just continued taking the photographs. This is more contemporary. This is one of the many youngsters who have been shot, within the black community by other youth, black youth. And this is a funeral of one of them. But I've always been interested in making things and other aspects of presentation. In fact, I was particularly influenced by the book, The Family of Man, a book of photography, a photographic exhibition in America. And most of my work is not just photographic in the terms of its presentation. It's only recently that galleries like you to put a series of photographs on a wall that goes around the room. I like to contextualize that with other material. So I also make collages. I use different material. And this is a window at the MAC, Midland Art Centre in Birmingham. There are 22 windows. Each are about, I would say, 7-8 feet long, high, and it stretches right across as a piece of work I did. This is a permanent piece in public. And this was taken from a story I had. And again, I don't develop stories based on commissions necessarily, although I'm not averse to being commissioned to do things, especially if the price is right. And I welcome any offer here today. But for me, this is the original where those pieces are taken from. And this is called Council of Voices. And the moment a young black person become conscious of race, they enter this conversation and they don't leave this conversation until they die. It's a circular conversation, which is around the edge of the board, as you can see. And there are about 4 or 5 conversations going on, and the only way you can tell which conversation it is by the typeface that goes around, and it goes and it comes back on itself. So its start point is not recognized, and so on. This is referencing a piece of work I've just done, which finishes in Gloucester Cathedral. It's in the Lady Chapel at Gloucester Cathedral. And here I started to look at torture, trauma, empire, colonialism, and enslavement. I think I have to put in brackets capitalism as well. And this work developed on my allotment. I have to quickly go through just the idea here because I was, again, like I say, the material speaks to me. I pour libation every time I work with a new material or if I work with tools or whatever. And so what had happened, I had gone for a walk, I found this piece of wire, I was trying to shape it within a particular shape, it wouldn't conform, it resisted. And I tried hammering it and it wouldn't shape, and I tried later on burning it to soften the wire and to use a sledgehammer to hammer it, and it wouldn't. It resisted, and I thought, are we as artists not just torturing the material we use to conform to the shapes we have in our heads? And I thought, well, torture, who has been tortured more than us as a people? So I thought I'd look at torture. And so I then later went on to use clothes as a metaphor for the skin. And this was all developed on the allotment. I pretty well work from my flat, really, because it's very small, and I tend to make small pieces because of the small flat. So when I'm outside, I tend to go a bit larger. And these garments that would have been tortured using those processes, sticks, stones, whatever material, these would be dipped in paint, red, white, and black, and then applied to these things. And having done a lot of research online about the torturing of people, and I would tie, as this is, to a tree, and then the process would be there in rain, in all weather. It was not the materials were not treated with any respect, as the people wouldn't have been at the time. And this is the other side of the dress. Sorry, there are a couple more? No. Okay. And this is another side of this exhibition, as I say, is in Gloucester at the moment. Next. For this purpose as well, we were what I had forgotten to say, why it's in Gloucester, we were invited. I'd done some mentoring with some young artists in Gloucester, and the project coordinator said, I was introduced to this slave song, which is held in Gloucester Archive, and it's the oldest song, written song of an enslaved African singing. And it was written by William Dixon and sent to Grenville Sharp, the abolitionist. And the person who wrote it, who was a friend of Grenville, wrote down the melody as well as the words. And so we were asked to respond to that. And I'd started looking at torture, so we incorporate. So I'd worked with a young artist by the name of Raida Shafriq. But in the middle of this, here, this is gourd, you see in red. That's a plant that I grew on my allotment, and later on a piece of banana leaf that I grew on my allotment as well. But we'd also gone to Barbados to do some research, and in the middle of this gourd, the text is taken from a document which is a true and exact history of the island of Barbados, which I pasted on the inside of the gourd. If you like, using the gourd as a sort of a birth chamber, just to show how deep the whole thing, the origin, where it was so complete in terms of occupying your life. Next one, please. And this is how it developed. I think this is when I was putting the material together. Torn clothes as a metaphor for tearing of the skin and the mutilation of the skin. Later on, I had the swords of the Jamaican swords of Gloucester. We gave them the slave code and asked them to choose a passage from the slave code, which they stitched onto this, and they were also branded using a branding iron, as would have been. But strangely enough, I was in the middle of this space, and one day I was working on. Before I was working, I arrived there and I had someone helping me. Would you like some coffee? Would you like something to eat? We should have lunch now. And this day I was there on my own, and I was stuck in this place, and I thought there was no music, no sound, just my own breath. And I thought to myself, what am I doing here? Am I not just trapped in a nightmare of my own making here? And I felt the need to sit, and I went, and the moment I sat down, I had a call, for Lucille, and it's the best phone call I've ever had. We just had a long chat, and, the work continued after that. So the work now is, it's in Gloucester Cathedral. It's on until the 30th of this month. There's this film online, I think, somewhere. It's called Voices of Gloucester, the project that coordinated the thing. But the film, you should be able to see it on their website. We went to Barbados, as I said, to do some research, plus research online and also in Gloucester Archive and the Kew Gardens. I think that's it. Well, there's much more, but we'll stop there.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm looking at the time as the facilitator. We've got 20 minutes for conversation. Can I throw in a few pointers? You can reject them if you like. Donald, to tell us about the chair, but also to explain your object. They received a little invitation from Ed to bring in an object, and Vanley has one as well. If we have time, Jason, I would love to make reference to the conversation we started about creativity and well-being. And Joe, what are the challenges in creating this archive, and what's next?
So my object is one of my vessels. This is called Silvori. It's one of about 40 plus. It's part of my Italian family. I have different pockets of Italians, depending what. I've got the runners in Ravenna, Rome is the ones I grew up with from late teens. And basically I've gone through the whole cycle of life with them. So during COVID, I just saw what was happening in Italy. And our government was saying we haven't got a model. Italy was our model. But I'm just seeing the suffering. So I started making these vessels. Also includes my daughter who lived in Como. So it's the people she's gone to school with and she's still in touch with, including her Scottish headmaster. So this was one of the firsts of, I did 3 at the time. I've done another couple for the solo show. And basically it's bits of wood that I've had in the workshop. And it's just upcycling what I can. I'm a bit of a beachcomber, but in a small sense. So we've gathered things from when we went to Jamaica, me and my daughter, little stones and little bits of wood, driftwood. So I'm not coming back with great big lump, but I am a bit of a beachcomber. So I look at small things and just take. A lot of my work is influenced by nature, the colours, of which during COVID, up to that point, people say your colours are a bit whack, and I'd be like, oh, okay. And I was on a course with the Craft Council called Hot House, and it was like, why as creatives do we do what we do? And I'm like, it's just how I feel, you know. But during COVID, I was out running, came across a meadow, the colours just pop. I mean, as humans, we're the ones who sort of go, but in nature, it's at random. So I felt so relieved of that, you know. So now when people say, no, I'm with nature, man. I don't know who you're with, but my work's with nature, you know. So I tend to use colour a lot, except for the piece, Chair of Uncomfortable Truths.
Right.
If Ed could find that. So the Chair of Uncomfortable Truths was, on Instagram, I came across an image of a slave ship. And then I was thinking, my God, you know, how can I convey this, what I'm seeing, with my work? And so I thought, okay, how can I make a piece, that interactive piece, which was basically, imagine during the summer, there's a chair, you sit back to back with a stranger. There's going to be an element of being uncomfortable. So there's that, and also being uncomfortable, you know, to talk about our past, you know, collectively, you know, what happened during slavery and blah, blah, blah. And just, some people are afraid, and I think the only way we're going to ever go forward is by talking and educating people. Mm-hmm. It's not about revenge and you did this, because it's happened such a long time ago. So the chair, this is the chair. So as you could see, there's a part in the middle which somebody said you should take that out, and I said no, that represents the chatteling of people in the marketplace. Obviously the change is, you know, castration. The nail, which people say, why a nail? I said, because that represents religion. Without religion, slavery would not have been as half as what it is. You know, so the Church of England, Pope, the Catholic Church, because first it was the Portuguese, if they hadn't given their blessing, it would not have been as it was. So it's to talk, when people are on about slave owners, no one ever really mentions the church. They talk about the stately homes and this person and that person, but no one ever really mentions the church. So for me, it's to start that conversation, you know, and to see how it is, and also to take that conversation into schools. Because I think we have to start educating. It's got to be from a young age. I think a lot of our age group, it's too closed. I think so. It's telling people about, you know, what happens, and not in a shameful way. You know, the Germans have done it for the Holocaust, you know, where they could speak about it, and it should be the same with what's happened in the past. So this is that chair, you know, which I will then have for next October. So once I finish the solo show, is then to start researching a bit more, funding. Mm-hmm. Somebody's going to write some music for it. Somebody's written some words for it. Mm-hmm. And it's to take it around through the UK, America, and for me it's quite important that to take it to Jamaica and to start interacting with creatives in Jamaica. And hopefully we could have some kind of exchanges. You know, after speaking to both of you guys, I'm like, okay, I need to dwell it. You know, you have much more information than I have, you know. And this would also lead into another project called Who Am I, which will then mean I take a DNA test, go to the parts of Africa or to see where I come from, then go back to Jamaica, then go to Maroon Town, speak to them. And what I want to do as well is not just go there and take, is to also interact with the local tradespeople. So to take something back from them. So there'd be an exhibition. So it'd be Jamaica for the Maroons and the Tainos, which are the indigenous Jamaicans. Then come back to England. Obviously, there's some English or Britishness in me.
Donald, can I just pause you there to explain, just to briefly explain why the DNA test? So when people were enslaved, their language, their identity, their spirituality, their whole worldview was removed, denied, suppressed. They were given a Christian name sometimes. Sometimes these names are ridicule. And that continued throughout enslavement, all in fear of uprising, but also to reinforce the idea of enslaved people as chattel. So what Donald's talking about is exploring his African identity, and an option to us if we can afford it, is a DNA test.
Yeah.
So, yeah, can I bring you into this, Joe? Your wonderful project that gives some visibility to artisans, and I really resonate with what Vanley said when I intuitively decided to call him. Sometimes we're doing this work, and you will understand this as well. There's an emotional connection to our work, and sometimes if our peers don't have that emotional connection, it can feel quite isolating. Sometimes I feel quite isolated in the work that I do because people are sometimes challenged by it. It doesn't matter to me because there's a whole group of people who feel that it's restorative. So on that note, can I bring you in terms of the challenges that you experienced with this project? Funding?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that what's quite frustrating at the moment is that I did get funding for the first part of it,
Right.
which I applied for, and I got that locally. But since then, and since this sort of blew up as well, of course, all the main organisations, so we're talking about Crafts Council and Quest and all the rest of the other, of course, are all interested in it because it's an element, a part that they haven't either been able to access, or this is fresh and new to them and things like that, which is all good, you know, and lovely. But the truth of the matter is, in order for me to get to my 100 Black Artisans, which is I want to do, I need the money to do it. I run a business day to day, and the only way I was able to do it with the original funding was to allocate a day rate, way lower than my normal rate as an agency person, but a rate so that I can do this and schedule it in my diary. So my assistant schedules it in the diary. So there's lots of enthusiasm from the main organisations, but no real cash. And sometimes it's not being creative about how they could release money to do it, because it isn't always the straightforward, let's give you 35k or 100k or whatever it is. Sometimes it can be in a different way.
Right.
But it's important, and, you know, multiply my project by others. You know, I'm not the only one. But it is quite frustrating, and I get phone calls all the time for opportunities to do things. We have a whole network of people. Mm-hmm. There's not only the 36 that were photographed, there's a whole other band of people behind it as well. And I'm thinking, I make sure that projects that we do like this, the artisans are paid, they're paid a decent rate. In this particular case with here, I have to say, Ed he was most upfront about it all. He said, this is what we can do, this is what I'd love to do. Mm-hmm. And it was really refreshing, because it made it just easy for me to say, right, let's get these guys on board. Let's really tie it into this building, which is amazing, and it totally fits with what the guys are doing, you know. And that's so refreshing and different, and you really want to push the boat out and do 110%. But so the challenges of funding are definitely are there. But the other challenge is these are at the private views. We had two private views, one for the artisans to come and talk, and they're talking to youngsters. You saw the audience around the other side. And then we have the more traditional one. Yes, and the other one is to work with some of these organisations in a refreshed way, in a different way. Not always in the traditional spaces, but in different spaces. If you want to reach these guys, if you really want to reach your audience, you have to go in different places. You need to do it in a different way. And there are fantastic opportunities happening in the Black creative community, where we're going in different spaces, there's different music involved, there's different other new, fresh collaborations, and it's quite hard sometimes, but not always, but to convince and to get people out of their quite traditional, they're worried about their benefactors, and they're worried about their, do you know what I mean? So I find that quite frustrating, and I don't know how the hell I'm going to carry it on. I will, as I keep saying to everyone here, I'm going to refresh and rethink to the end of this year to decide what I'm doing next year. I've got other people to shoot. But it continues to be a challenge.
Wonderful. Thank you. Vanley, you bought an object.
Yes,
Would you like to talk about it?
Yes, mine is that barbed wire piece that's hanging there. And it's the face of a young man, and there's a gun involved if you're not aware of it. And it's pointing outwards, really, and it's just looking at the destruction of the youth through violence within their community. The gun isn't pointing out. Basically, I'm suggesting that it is from the inside out rather than someone pointing a gun. Unlike the many we see, the Floyds and the many others we see in atrocities around the world. And I found this piece of wire, and again, I like Donald, I don't have a TV. I think one of my advice to people, creatives, people who want to be creatives, get rid of the TV, really. And my reason for getting rid of the TV is I was watching a film one night, and I could hardly keep awake to watch this film, and I fell asleep before it ended. And I thought, I can't do this, so I got it. I didn't get rid of it immediately. I locked it in a cupboard, just in case I needed to get back to it. And after a week, I decided I didn't. So it gave me the opportunity to mess about. I like working with found material, and that piece of wire I got from a bin. And over a course of time, I created that piece. And again, I don't really, I don't know what I'm going to create until I start. Sometimes I don't find the material and say, well, this is going to make this. I just start working with the material, feeling it, playing with it, and then eventually something happens.
Wonderful, thank you.
I mean, just briefly, which is not here, and I'll just mention briefly. Anyway, another one I made is, I made 4 jackets. It should be about 5 jackets, but I can't do vanity. I don't know if that's got anything to do with me. But religion, I covered the jacket with the Bible, and it's really like a straight jacket. It's one jacket I wouldn't put on. I can't put on. You wouldn't ever get it off. The other one is burden. Burden is extremely heavy. It's a jacket made of nails and screws, very heavy. But I would prefer to put on burden than to put on religion. And the other one is death. Vanity, as I say, is another one. But again, I can't. I don't know why. I know what I want to do, but I can't, which is to cover the jacket with hair. Hair being vanity, but I just can't get around to doing that one. But work in progress. And again, it's just exploration. And the work I do, if you like, I explore these things, and then they get picked up through galleries or through projects or whatever it is. So I don't necessarily work to commission, but others, having seen the work, expand on it.
I just want to say something. It's such a pleasure to have Vanley here. Thank you so much for coming. We travelled together on the train, and he started talking about his projects, past and things that are coming. We were just like that, weren't we? We were just like, we could just have the whole evening just on Vanley.
Yeah.
I've found on Instagram a thing called Falling Through the Cracks, which is basically, you got your Picassos and your Dali, but they're all black Americans, which I never knew as a teenager. One of my heroes, I'm a Charles Eames because I'm from a furniture, so he's one of my heroes. But you've got like Theaster Gates and Travis Strachan, and he falls into that category.
Oh my God.
No, seriously.
He does.
No, he really does. He goes, I'm just a doodler.
Yeah, I dabble.
A dabbler, sorry.
A dabbler.
He's a dabbler, yeah. I am a dabbler. He speaking to him, and it's passing
inspiration.
down to other people. And my thing is not just passing it down to say just black kids, it's whoever will grasp that, because working class kids now, they have to fight for everything, So my thing is, and whoever, I say to black kids, whoever is going to give you that mentoring, do not reject them because they're white or Indian or Chinese. If they're going to offer you that, take it, And so, yeah, this guy.
One thing I found also from shooting all these people, and I'm just looking at Annette here, is just when you start to dig a bit deeper about the people's backgrounds, where they started, how they came where they came. And we had, I think you had the lady earlier, I've forgotten her name. She's a potter. She came from a completely. She was an interior designer. She did like palaces in the Emirates and places like that. It's like extraordinary. And then she became a potter, But that's where her calling was. It totally was. It was very similar to yourself. She'd had a really high-flying role, and then she just made this transition over. A lot of people made transitions. Might be an age thing, might be something just blew up and whatever. And that was interesting to hear and to see, and to appreciate as well. And I think it's been a comfort in creating the network, or having the network being created as a result of the project, when people hear other people's stories. They love to go to one another's studios, for sure.
Yeah.
And they're excited to see people like them, let's be honest about it. And I think also to share the common things, I'm an advisor, I'm going to think about it, but the common things are, you know, it took them all this time to get to this point to understand how to do this 30 years later, and so on and so forth. And that's just fascinating to hear. With people who have had so much experience and are so creating such beautiful stuff, and they still have these niggles and these doubts and these. That's just classic creative, isn't it? But so it's been a privilege so far to shoot.
But I think the overriding thing is about encouraging the next generations. You know, it's really important. You know, it really, really is important, because schools now, they're not catering. All the BTEC colleges, all that infrastructure's gone. So a lot of, and it affects a lot of working class. It's going to go back to the haves and have-nots, you know, it's a shame, because England, we are a very creative country. It's just the government's never backed it, but we are really very creative. My Italian friends go, every time we try to build something, we hit an ancient whatever, so they never get anything done. And he sort of said, but in England, you live the lifestyle. You know, you have that freedom. But we just, as a country, we just don't know how to sell it. Italians aren't better than us, but they are better salesmen. You know, they hustle. They'll sell you your own shirt. Go, yeah, I'll buy it back from you, you know.
But I think the thing with creativity, if I might, I think as creatives, I think all we need to do is to make it. You know, they will learn from it.
Yeah.
I mean, I did know when I started taking photographs, I was conscious of leaving. It's not so much a legacy, but I wanted for a black child when they grow up who wanted to be a furniture designer, who wanted to be a dressmaker, who wanted to be a set designer, an actor, actress or writer, to be able to go to one source and find all the material they want, and not having to scour the earth to find little scraps of material. That material should have been generated by us. So that's kind of why I started taking the photographs. And the archive, if you like, fed into that. And the archive at Birmingham Central Library, I have at least 40 students a year who visit that archive, you know, not just from England. We had one young man from the Isle of Man who rang me to say he wanted to use something from the archive. From Israel, we had a woman who was writing the book who wanted to use some of the photographs from the archive. So, you know, whatever we make as creatives, you really don't even have to pass that information on. It's good if you can, but that information will be gathered by some of them in the future. The idea is, if you like, just to keep making. They will find a home.
I think
what it is, you do need to educate people as well. There are people like yourself, and I know other photographers who are self-taught, but you do need to teach people as well, you know, how to cut a dovetail, how to set out. There is a need for that, and we cannot lose that, you know.
One of the things, I'm a trustee for Heritage Crafts, and one of the things, as anybody who knows it, you know, they have their endangered list. They have a lot of activities. I'm involved in a lot of the training that they're trying to get in place for makers who are older, who have no apprentices, and when they pass, that's going to be gone. And it's all along the same lines. How on earth do we encourage people to take up these trades, these professions, these artisanal types of works? You know, we've got tools that we can record these skills, and we can document and things like that. But it is an issue in that it's not being taught often. And also, in my case, my route in is to at least show these guys. Each one of these artisans were recorded as well, so there are short films, or at least there are a few films being made. There's the rest to be made. So at least they've got a starting point to say, how do I start? Where's the starting point? This is someone I know, but they were influenced by, you just said who you are. They were influenced by this and by that and by this, and that encourages them to go into it, and then that's how it can start that way. So that's my sort of little foray into that. But I do recognise that I'm that person.
Sure.
You know, lucky for me, I come from a background where I've got creativity around me, so it wasn't difficult for me to explore it or to say, we were talking about it the other day. I used to go to the V&A. I used to go on the train from Leighton. Not the train, the bus, and you know, you can get the bus that takes you all the way there, and just spend the afternoon in the V&A on my own and come all the way back, and I did it with my children and so on and so forth, and that's how it happens.
Yeah.
You know, but if you're not exposed to it, if you don't see people that introduce you to it, how might you even think about it?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different ways of becoming a craftsman or woman. So there's no one set path. And some of it, like when my daughter, she lives in Holland, she bought a flat the other day. She said, I want to do the kitchen. And she wanted to do some resin. So I said, right, you've got to start looking. We went through it, but I said also the tutorials on YouTube. That's another, things like that are there. You know, so it's really a combination of trial and error, picking up a camera and just, I love this, I'm going to do it. You know, if you can't get into a college to teach you, then, but there's so many ways, you know, but they are getting harder.
We've come to the point in the conversation now to invite questions from the audience. I really wanted you to kind of lean into this, Jason, in terms of, you know, creativity and well-being, but maybe we can weave that into an audience question as well. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions for the group?
Well, not so much a question, but an observation, really. I just wondered, two out of the group have advocated throwing out the television and going back to sort of basics and stuff like that. It really touched me.
I don't have a TV.
Oh, well, three out of the group. A very funny thing happened just here about 2 days ago. A fella came in and he's got rid of all his technology. He's taken his phone, his television, his computer and dropped them into a bucket of water, just like that, and become quite in tune again with nature. And it struck me very much that this was a sort of movement in Scandinavia which links with you. About 20 years ago, this was all the rage. If it wasn't wood, it's not coming into the house. You know, to throw everything away. Yeah. Do you think that's a true way to develop creativity? Is just get rid of all this junk?
I can only say, you know, in so doing, at the time I was doing up a flat and I had one wall. So when my nieces and nephews came round, which there's about 9 of them, I'd say you could do anything you want on this wall, but nowhere else. And one day I came up and there's little Jarvis in the hallway going like this. What are you doing? You know? I said, only that wall. You know, most of them have come up and they're all in the creative industries. I think what it is, you can only encourage them to do things. And, you know, TV to me, a similar thing to what Van was saying, is staying up late and then the next day I'll wake up early, so I'm absolutely shattered. I'm like, why?
The technology, and I know technology, is a virus. The scrolling on a mobile screen is a virus. And the immediate, for the young generation to be able to learn something, but it needs to immediately, they've got to learn it like straight away or they're not interested. I'm nodding heads, I'm seeing it now because they know some of the lecturers who are here, they know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's all going to get worse. AI comes along and it just puts it on, and it's going to put it on another level because they don't even have to do anything to get a result. They don't have to learn it to get a result. It's like, well, you'd almost think in all the industry, you think craft is going to be our saviour because they have to physically hands and learn something and use tools and learn the skills and the craftsmanship. Do you know what? Time's ticking because that's also going to start. AI is going to have an impact on that. That means these individuals who want to learn something, they don't even have to learn it anymore. So I think there needs to be serious discussions at the government end to look how we can counteract that because we're on it's ticking down rather than ticking up, and it's actually kind of quite scary. I know of an example of the head of design at Nike was put up against, he had to design some trainers in like 24 hours, as many as he could, up against AI. He came up with like 4, as in sellable, beautiful. AI came up with 400. I mean, I'm not being funny, it's like, here's the keys, the door's there.
I mean,
Could we take another question?
So it's a kind of positive solution to some of what we've been talking about,
Sure.
and also a question. I'm the founder of a charity for 11 to 18-year-olds called Escape to Make.
Right.
Great.
And we help them to escape social media
Right.
and whatever they're struggling with, being a bit bored, right through to poverty or whatever it is. And we help them to make things, make friends, and make a difference. We're now one of the biggest employers of artists, freelance artists and craftsmen in Lancaster and Morecambe. And what we do is we've done over 500 different creative workshops now, 60 different things from jewellery making to furniture upcycling to fashion to photography to all kinds of things. But it's not enough to just make a pot and take it home, because we want to give this generation purpose. So what we do is we support them to put on community events. And so far they have put on, this amazing undervalued age group have put on 2 green festivals, a cabaret in a derelict nightclub in Morecambe,
Wow.
and a heritage market festival. And they've learned a skill, a dying skill. We've brought in expert craftsmen and taught them old things that are dying out and got them captivated, and we bring in inspirational speakers. And it works, and the impact that we're making just didn't look true, so we asked a university to evaluate it, and their evaluation came out better than ours. We want to scale it across Lancashire now.
Wonderful.
And then further afield, and everything we do is designed by our youth board.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So
You have a question as well?
I have a question, and that is that we are always on the lookout for inspirational speakers, and the panel today are so inspiring. And thank you so much. And if I could give you my card, and we could connect.
I actually, I think one of your groups were next to me in Vintage by the Morecambe by the Sea. One of your colleagues was there. I actually applied to come to do some workshops for yourselves. Yeah, and I didn't get an answer, but it was. I actually met but I thought it was amazing. I truly thought it was absolutely unbelievable.
Sorry.
Never heard it before. I thought it's fantastic. I thought, right, I want a piece of that because I'd love to be involved.
We're a tiny team and we're really underfunded. I've done this as a volunteer for 6 years, often working 100-hour weeks. I'm really sorry you didn't get an answer. We're looking for funding. I'll
I
get
also think it's a true meaning of levelling up. You know, it really is levelling up.
Yes.
Hey, hi. I suppose I just wanted to put in a bit of a defence of telly, because I love telly.
Hold on. Could we do that at the end?
Well, yeah,
And
but
ask
I am
somebody for a
leading
question?
to a question as well.
Okay, could you just-
and it's to do with telly though.
I'm just conscious of
Yeah,
the
but
time and
I
I'm
want to
trying
ask
my-
about things like the kind of TV shows that are on now that are about crafts, that are kind of things like Repair Shop, things like, you know, Sewing Bee, The Throwdown, these kind of making programs. And what are they? Do you think they have a role to play in kind of presenting kind of what the opportunity of craft and making is to people
They
in an everyday kind of
have a
setting?
role to play, but they don't play that role because they never, ever in the credits say where you could go and retrain. I mean, they did the woodworking one. I kept seeing it on Instagram. Ignored it. They called me up and I said, one is I've passed that stage in my career. I said, but I don't really like these shows because all it is just like the apprenticeships, because you don't actually, you have this person, the black person, the lesbian, the this, the gay guy, but they never ever say where you can go and train. No, they don't have to say it. There's no information. Zero.
The other side as well, and I kind of agree, is what I don't like about some of these shows, and I've been in some of these shows, is that emotional attachment to draw the audience in. Yeah. And I'm like, with the respect, I don't give a crap about that. I want to see the people making it. That's what I want to see. I don't want to know about the emotional journey. With respect, I want to see these people making and how they do it. Yeah. And they play on that element a bit too much.
Too much.
Way too much.
Not only that, they did
Just 1 minute.
Sorry.
I'm going to assert my role.
They did one.
No, and no. Okay, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Just find out how many more questions, I am down here to do closing remarks, but what I'm going to do is share my spot with closing remarks with you guys. How's that as a compromise? Okay, brilliant. How many more questions do we have?
I'd just like...
Two
sorry,
questions.
Jo, can I just ask, what do you think we can do as artists to stop this onslaught of talking about arts in the language of capitalism? Because it seems to me that this has become a thing that we have to talk about the creative industries now. It's absolutely wonderful listening to you all talking about the actual craft of it, the mindfulness, the being in the present, the well-being that you talk so beautifully about just concentrating on one thing. And I feel like in none of the conversations at policy level do we ever talk about that. We only talk about, it's a burgeoning, and I've been guilty of it myself as trying to encourage arts education, encourage young people to access the arts. How can we start to bring that conversation away from the language of capitalism and into actually creating a happy, well society of makers and artists?
Well, the statistics out there about mental health and well-being, I mean, you could literally Google it for yourself, you'll find that we're kind of at that tipping point from a young generation that they're going to have it tough, and that we spend our time subconsciously somewhere else when we should be in the present. I find, and I said earlier that I was a broken man. I'd had real bad trauma in my life back in London, the last couple of years in London, and the thing that's made me who I am and why I like myself is because of craft. Is that I can, if I find myself, my subconscious going somewhere, or when you have the situations in life where you walk away from a situation, I need to get my head together. I need to just walk away from the situation. I just need to walk away, and I'll come back in 10 minutes. And what that does is that you start reenacting the conversation, and you start going through the argument that you've just about had or you're going to have. And it's like, that's not what it's about. You need to kind of just get back to the present. And that's what craft does really well, is that it draws you back to presence. And this is the weird thing, it's so weird me talking like this because, again, my life was so different. And, again, specific to answer your question is that I think that there needs to be more emphasis on mental health and well-being, even more than there is now. That's going to create a better, happier foundation moving forward.
I think it's more than that.
No, sorry, that's fine.
I think that's all right.
No,
that's
that's
correct. It's absolutely correct. That's kind of the purpose behind it. But I think more fundamentally, the introduction to craft and to the activities around craft as a legitimate part of work or part of hobbyism or whatever you want to call it, needs to be in the curriculum and early. Yeah. And you've got people like Quest and you've got Heritage Crafts, I'm obviously going to mention, who are engaged with schools, starting to have Saturday workshops where the guys get these first introductions, and there's more discussion about things like that going on. And I think that's one way to start to combat it. But we have got a bigger issue around apprenticeships, around having the facility for people to access, for it to be a legitimate part of university or craft or this or that, and to ensure that small employers, and I'm an employer, have a straightforward, easy way to take on apprentices, where it's not convoluted and it's not difficult, and you sort of think, I might as well just do this myself, and stuff like that. So it's a handful of things which lead to basically what Jason's saying, which is that sense of well-being, that parcelling up of, this is us making a more rounded individual, rather than going down this sausage mill of, this and this only. And that's a massive mindset. That's a big thing to be trying to do. But I feel that's what needs to happen. And organisations are trying to do it, but they're slow. It feels really slow. And sometimes some of the private organisations that you're talking about are the ones that are actually doing the real work on the ground.
Vanley, would you like to come in here?
Yes,
And then we've got one last question over here, and then we're going to do a final remarks. I've changed closing remarks final.
I mean, just to say, I went through a divorce many years ago, and I didn't particularly want to leave the house with half the washing machine and half the cutlery and half this, and I left really with very little, and my negative collections and some records and so on. But what I did, and I had nowhere to live. I squatted in the flat I'm in at the moment, and it was just me and the flat. I worked with my uncle at the time as an odd job man, you know. But one of the things I felt the need for is creativity. And I created a lot of the work that I now rely on through that time. It is a wonderful healer, really. But I think a lot of us are pointing questions like, you know, with the black community, we'll hear people say, oh, why aren't there any images of black people in this gallery or that collection? But the very people who are asking those questions don't have any images in their house. You know, I think, first of all, we ought to say, what are you guys doing about creativity? You know, how do you engage with your kids about creativity? Do you have a day when you make things? Do you have a day when you show them how to use a hammer? I mentored this young lad, and he was about 7 at the time, and he said, I was showing him how to use a hammer and nail, and he said, he basically thanked me. You know, he says, this is the big moment for him when he's using that. And at one point during that conversation, he says to me, when I grow up, are you going to teach me how to shave? You know, so what I'm saying is, you need to get involved. You know, start with yourself. You know, as Michael Jackson says, when you point one finger, well, as an African saying, when you point one finger ahead, there are 5 pointing back at you. You know, so start, each of you, find a time with your grandkids, your kids, make mud pies, you know, jump in the lake, make sticks, go-karts, whatever it is, teach them your use. Go back to you. Not the institutions will pick it up, whatever, but you know, just imagine when they're older and they're taking their kids through those things. I used to have summer holidays when I used to teach my kids how to make pinhole camera photographs. So we make the camera. Another time I would show them how to make a knife from a nail, how to make the toys we played with as youth, how to make a go-kart, you know, all of those things. So, you know, start with you.
Yes.
So my question is, it's probably been discussed, but I work at LJMU, and we do sort of like wellbeing sessions for not just the students, but the members of staff as well. Excuse me, I've got a really sore throat. And I'd just like your thoughts on what you think the creative art or whatever you do for your, as in the artisan culture, helps the students through wellbeing. And also, as I say, as members of staff, it can be quite stressful and stuff. How do you think that impacts on the education of the students? Maybe taking them away from what they normally do within the modules or whatever, just to have that quiet time down and do something creative.
Again, I'd say one of my nephew went through, after COVID, quite a bad period. And one of the things is to say to him, you know, we go for a walk, let's do a bit of drawing, you know, and try and just get him to be relaxed, things that he liked doing. Introducing him to different forms of creativity. You know, we used to go a lot to 154, you know, take him to museums more and just say, what do you think of this? Try and engage him in this, and, you know, for him to get out of that. I mean, it's going to be really hard to some kids after COVID, you know. But it's got to be, whatever it is, has to be government-led. But then as individuals, we then have to talk to our MPs. You know, I'm hoping to address some of this, especially the education with Who Am I, because the Who Am I English part of me will go back to my college. And in so doing, I will then say, but what about the training of young people? You know, it's to bring, but as individuals, we've all got little bits, some larger than others, but we've all got bits to play. And like I say, some of it is looking at your family members and saying, actually, they're a bit down, how can I engage them? It might be taking them to the football match, or I don't know, it could be anything, a music concert, you know. Culture is so wide. It's not just the arts. It's so wide, it's so many different things, you know, so.
Can I chip in there as a kind of my way of doing closing as well? The artists and artisans were invited by Ed to bring in an object, and I snuck in one myself, and I was desperately hoping that somebody might ask me about it. I would like to show you my object and then just kind of finish off with what Donald was saying, round off with what Donald was saying. Would you mind passing me the little bottle? Would somebody, please? Thank you, I'd be so grateful. Okay, this is my object. I'll tell you what it is. It's indigo. In the days of slavery, enslaved people grew indigo and other natural dyes, logwood, fustic, Brazil wood, and they were exported to European textile mills, including this location. During the pandemic, I collected the seeds from these former sites of slavery. I germinated them. I allowed them to go from seed to seed and just converted a little bit into indigo dye. This year, maybe later this year, perhaps early next year, I'm going to grow much larger amounts of indigo from seed to dye. I'm calling it emancipated indigo because probably on a large scale, this is the first time that the descendants of enslaved people have grown so much indigo outside the colonial days. And in response to what you're saying, I spend a lot of time around plants, nature. When I first grew the indigo, the honeybees came back and they stung me. I had allergic reaction. They stung me, but I realised I needed to give them their time first. I grew the indigo with a farmer, local farmer in Jamaica. We handled the soil before and after. The soil, the same sites of enslavement were being repaired by the same plants that were exploited. Indigo fixes nitrogen to the soil, so the quality of the soil improved. And in response to what you said, sometimes I think when you grow something, when you grow and you nurture something, even if it's a pot plant, I really believe in us restoring our relationship with nature. You know, we have a symbiotic relationship with nature. Why are we so detached from it? Even if we don't have space to grow outside, we can grow a plant, we can nurture that plant. And I think that is profoundly therapeutic. So this is Jamaican emancipated indigo. So on that note, I'd like to thank Ed just for bringing us all here. This is my third time up here, and it's always a wonderful, warm welcome. You know, as I said, sometimes I feel quite isolated in my practice, and it's just incredible how the connection with Ed has grown and grown. It's just a joy to have you artists here on the panel, and to meet you, Donald and Joe, to see you again, Jason and Vanley, and to Gillian. You know, thank you for hosting, you know, this wonderful exhibition. And I'm going to pass on, rather than prolong the closing remarks, I'm just going to give everybody a quick, brief, final words. Joe.
I think I've already said it, but I would like to say thank you to Ed. Thank you, Ed. Ed said to me, the reason why he wanted to bring this here was because he felt that he could do it better in terms of giving it the breathing space it needed. And I think he's completely given the opportunity for that to happen. It's not only what you're seeing now tonight, we've got other workshops. We've got work that Luigi here has created, some of which is here. Plus a whole other, I mean, it's beautiful, created from the work that I didn't know that was going to happen. And then Ed put a lot of time into making sure we were all okay, we got here all right, he looked after us and everything like that. So thank you so much.
Yes. Donald.
I mean, I've been really impressed coming here and seeing the sound men, camera guy, Ed wobbling around with his bionic foot.
Bionic foot.
Bionic knee, sorry. Just really, really nice meeting the staff here and just looking at you guys. You know, it's been a great trip.
Brilliant. Jason?
Yeah, it's just been amazing. I kind of never done this too much, but I just think it's been fantastic. So Ed, yeah, for real, and everybody else, yeah.
Stop it! Never get through the door.
I'll put a sticker on your leg later. Don't worry. And obviously, just meeting you guys and that has been fantastic. And if anything, Joe's exhibition, just spread the word. That's how this works. Please just spread the word. That's how this works. Yes, so thank you.
I think I would like to thank everyone involved, and thank you, the audience, for coming. But I think most importantly, I always feel and try to get the audience at an event like this to really communicate with each other. And in fact, I've been thinking it might be quite good when people come in just to break up where they sit so that you can meet other people. Because you come in and you go out and we don't know where that information goes. So what I would love to say really to each of you, use this opportunity to engage with another member of the family to create something.
We all know each other, it's the north of England.
Well, then start a club. Well, let's see. We'd love to come to your exhibition. Invite me to your exhibition.
I mean, a real proof of that is the fact that actually I properly met Ed and Jason at a networking event that I had for Black Artisans at the Crafts Council in London. And from that, they both came to me and we were talking. It was Ed said, look, there's something, I'm thinking about something here. And here we are now.
Wonderful.
So it does work, talk to one another.
Yes.
I'd like to say as well to, support this lady here.
Yes.
Really, I like what she's doing.
Yeah.
And we need to level up and spread that around the country.
Yeah, completely.
Really impressed with that.
As well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you to the production team as well and to the audience. And can we